Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers, author and teacher. Our guest today, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Kady. I'm almost 80 years old. And what happened to me was when I was 46 years old. It was an
Okay.
unbelievable experience.
Yeah,
Well, would you
yeah,
like
you
to
can just
hear?
go and tell us about it.
Well, just returned back from the Med and staying in a stopgap place before I could go home. And everything was fine. And I woke up at dawn. And I thought, well, I can't get up yet because I don't want to wake my partner up. So I just lay there thinking about things and looking forward to getting home to see my children, especially my little boy who was only 4.5 years old. And I was ruminating about everything. And all of a sudden, I got this pain in my chest. And then it felt as if an elephant had stamped down on my chest or a concrete block, and I couldn't breathe. The next moment, I catapulted out of my body, literally catapulted out of my body. And I was at the side of it, a little above it, and, well, I couldn't understand what had happened. And I was there for a long time, looking at my body, trying to fathom things out. How could I be there and be here? And then after a while, I realized it was just a shell of me. It's just it wasn't me, it was a shell I had inhabited. And then I thought, what's going to happen to me now? I can't just be here forever looking at my dead body. And I looked at my partner fast asleep, and there was a dark cloud covering him. Couldn't actually see him properly. And then something in the corner of the room caught my eye, and I thought, what's going on there? And as I looked at it, it was a light greyish mist. And it pulled me into it. It sucked me into it. And I went into a black, dark tunnel. But it wasn't scary. It wasn't frightening. It was very comforting. And I could see this light way off in the distance. And as I was looking at the light, all of a sudden, I was out of the black tunnel. I was in a vortex, and the vortex was getting lighter and lighter. I was traveling through it with my arms outstretched in front of me. I couldn't see my arms outstretched in front of me. I just knew they were, and I was speeding through that vortex like street lightning. It was lovely. It was wonderful. All my pain had gone. All my worries had gone. Well, everything had gone. I'd completely forgot about everything I'd left behind. It was exciting. It was thrilling. It was wonderful. And I seemed to travel for thousands of miles. I knew I was heading for that light that seemed thousands of miles off in the distance. But as I was traveling towards it, it was getting bigger and bigger and quite enjoying myself. And
Mm-hmm.
then someone, some being, something, and I know it was male, it joined alongside me. And I couldn't see the person, being, whatever it was. And it seemed to be escorting me. And it said to me with a male voice, your body is indeed dead, but you were safe. And I thought, well, I know my body's dead. I know I'm safe. I'm all right, thank you. And continued traveling with this being at my side, going like zoom like that. Then the vortex started changing. And I seemed to be enveloped by all these beautiful pastel colors. And as I was traveling, they turned to gold and then white. But now this is where my experience differs from a lot I've read about since, in that as I was traveling and enjoying myself, and knowing I would reach that light, but in no hurry to reach it because it was all exciting. I was enjoying it too much. And then I thought of my two young adult children. I thought of my beautiful daughter. And as I thought of her, but as I was still traveling at the same time, you know, I became part of my daughter's unconscious consciousness. That's the way I'd put it. And it wasn't scary, it wasn't frightening. It was very, very beautiful. It was wonderful. And I didn't know until then how much my daughter loved me. I mean, she was a stroppy teenager type, you know. But she really loved me. And the love I felt coming from her was overwhelming, utterly overwhelming. It was so beautiful. And I knew then that we all go on. I also knew then that one day she'd be where I am and we'd be together. She doesn't know anything to this day, but I told her I loved her and we'd meet soon. I knew that this life was short. And tra- travel, while this was happening, I was still traveling through my vortex. I was in two places at once. Traveled on what seemed like thousands of miles, and then remembered my son. My son is 53 years old now. He's got his little children here with him at the moment, and he's in the kitchen, with the dog as well. And it was exactly the same. Now, my son, that son's my elder son, and he's very macho, very much the man. Even when he was young, that young, he was very macho and didn't reveal his feelings. He wasn't touchy feeling, or anything like that. And he
Mm-hmm.
still isn't. The love I felt from him, again, it was overwhelming. It's making me cry now. This experience happened 33 years ago, and it feels as if it only happened this morning. I live and breathe it all the time, and I carried on through this beautiful vortex. I was so happy. I mean, this was against all my beliefs. I'd studied theology for 5 years, and this was nothing to do with religion, which surprises me. That does surprise me. And traveled on for thousands of miles with with the beautiful pastel colors, which turned to gold and then turned to white. And do you know, I reached the end of my vortex. And as I was reaching the end of the vortex, it became sort of transparent, and I could see. I don't know if it was our universe. I could see a universe. I could see planets. I think I could also see the Earth, but I reached the end of the vortex, and what loomed up in front of me was this great big planet, and I knew. And I don't know how I knew. It was a feeling. It was a knowing. I knew all my late loved ones, all my late animals, birds, all of them. They were all eagerly waiting for me and very excitedly waiting for me to cross over from my vortex. I think it's the place we call heaven. That's I never believe it. Oh, and also this I must remember. Yes, my late sister, who died when I was 6 years old, was at my side. Now, don't tell me how I knew it was her. I just did, because I was only 6 years old when she died. I mean, she was a baby when I died, when she died. So how I knew it was her, I don't know. But then I did all this traveling, went through all this experience, and I'd completely forgotten about my little boy. I had a little 4.5-year-old who was in and out of hospital at the time. You wouldn't think so if you saw him now. Um, and as I thought of him, I said telepathically with my voice, I said, "Who's going to look after my little boy now?" And before the words, before I'd finished saying it, I was about turned. I could see right down through the vortex. I could see right through the black tunnel. And I saw my little boy there. I could see my little boy. And he was, I mean, he didn't know what had happened to me, but I'd been on the continent for a few weeks on vacation during the school holidays. And so I was eagerly heading home at the time and with presents for him and everything. But he didn't, he wanted to be with his mum. And that's why he was sobbing his heart out to be with his mum. And witnessing this, I went into some sort of shock. And then, I was about turned again. I didn't turn myself around. And I was looking at this beautiful universe. I think I could see the earth in distance, and I could see this place I think we call heaven. And I could feel the pull of all my loved ones, my animals. And then my grandfather, who had died when I was 13 years old, whom I loved very much. I have a multitude of relatives who passed on, but he was one of those that I really loved. Well, I loved them all, but I was very close to. And he said, I heard his voice. I didn't see him. I heard his voice, and he had a beautiful voice. In the 1920s, he had cut a record singing because his singing voice was so good. His beautiful voice. I can still hear it now. And he said, "This need not be your time. You decided." With that, I about turned again, and I was speeding right back down through the vortex and through the black tunnel. But speeding back through that vortex wasn't beautiful, wasn't nice, wasn't comforting. It wasn't exciting. It was scary. It was light grey in colour and cold. And I was speeding, really fast. And I was thinking, this is strange. Then I got to the black tunnel. This time it wasn't comforting. It was very frightening and scary. And I panicked, really panicked. But I was through it very quickly and then back in my body. And my body took this breath, and then it was breathing beautifully. And I was walking on air. I was so excited. I was overwhelmed because now I know that we go on. Not just us, but our animals. Animals go on as well. Doesn't matter what sort of animal. And I think it's any biological creature that has the breath of life goes on. It's that breath of life we have in us, which is spirit, isn't it? We call it spirit, breath of life. So whatever you call it, die, die. I don't want to wrap any of this up in theology. It was just my experience. It was wonderful. I know now we really go on. Not afraid of dying at all. In fact, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not looking forward to leaving my loved ones, And I have made it to, I'm 80 in February. I've made it to this age. And boy, have I achieved a lot since that experience. Because as a youngster, well, as a young woman, I'd had 2 children, I had 3 children, but I was very world shy, very reserved, kept myself to myself. Um, yes, but after that experience, I talk to anybody. I, I really do talk to anybody. You know, people on the streets, you know, people in cafes, restaurants, shops, everything. I'm a completely different person. Um, because it gave me courage, gave me happiness, gave me peace. That wasn't the end of the story. My partner, who I really adored, I couldn't understand why he was covered in this dark, sort of black, greyish cloud. But I was soon to find out. It turned out he was someone no one would want to know, let alone have in their lives. Um, but that relationship did end, thankfully. And it took a while, but oh, that was incredible. I walked into my bedroom. Well, I was going to watch 3:15 film, which was on every weekday, and it was geared mostly to women, you know, the nice, lovey-dovey, that sort of thing, films. And I always looked forward to that before I started preparing the evening meal, you know. So I walked. I was in what you call an apartment. What do I call a flat? I walked from my sitting room, walked into my bedroom to get some chocolate that I kept in my bedside table drawer to enjoy while I watched the film. I didn't. I didn't even get round the bed. To my right, in midair, I thought, oh, "What's that?" It was as if somebody switched a video on. It was a. It was like a hologram in midair. I saw this long table, highly polished table, very long. There were 4 men sitting around it, 2 women, and they were enjoying themselves. They were enthralled, happily enthralled by something this gentleman on the end of the table was saying to them. I couldn't tell what he was saying. I knew their voices and the happiness of it. And then it switched off. It was gone. I got my chocolate. I sat down in front of the film. I didn't eat my chocolate, but I couldn't tell you what the film was about. I was in shock. I only told one person who was my best friend, and she said, well, she listened to me and she said, I think you better go and see a doctor. But nearly 3 weeks later, I'd fallen in love with this little seaside town I'm living in now. And I used to make twice a week, I'd do my shopping here and just drive along the front and look at the sea with my little dog. And which I was doing again. But I normally left the house at 2 or 3 o'clock. Well, anyway, I did my shopping. I must have taken longer than normal because when I went to go to my normal cafe, it was closed. Everything was shutting up. And it was only about 10 to 5, but they do close early in this little seaside town. And I thought that's fine. I'll just go back to the car because my little dog was in the car waiting for me. She was a little black Scotty, and she was very good. She just used to lie down on the back seat, ignore everybody, and go to sleep until I came back. And so, but then as I was crossing the road to get to the car park, I went into another asthma. You see, before I had my dying coming back experience, I did not know that I was a serious, silent asthmatic, which means I don't wheeze, I don't get any warnings. All of a sudden, I can't walk or speak, I can't breathe, basically. Um, I'd had episodes before that where I couldn't breathe, especially at night. And when these happened, sometimes I would leave my body and float upwards and look back at my body, and then whoosh, I'm back in it. And I said to my mother, because my mother had been a nurse during the war. I said, what was it? What do you think happens to me? And she said, oh, my girl, you, because of her accent, she said, you're probably anemic. I'll buy you some vitamin C and some iron tablets. It's probably anemia. It was nothing to do with anemia. I was asthmatic and didn't know it. And but I ignored because they only happened momentarily. I I dismissed them, and they didn't happen that often. And I went through having my babies and didn't have asthma, but then it came in my 40s, which it often does with asthmatics come back in your middle 40s. Um, yes, so now I've lost my thread. I forgot, where was I? Oh, yes, uh, yes, so, well, anyway, I was crossing the road and I had this asthma attack, and I'd been prescribed inhalers by then, and I'd forgotten to bring one out in my pocket, so I didn't have one with me. But I had watched a film, an American film. It was about a little girl being kidnapped who was an asthmatic, and the mother was saying to the kidnappers, "Oh, give her coffee, give her coffee." So I looked that up, and I discovered, which I actually told my doctor, I discovered that coffee and our inhalers, our bronchodilators, have an ingredient in coffee that's in the bronchodilators, and it's called theophylline. And I had learned that coffee helped the asthma. If I had a couple of cups of coffee, the asthma would go, because the theophylline in the coffee opens up the little capillaries that go to the lungs, letting air in. Um, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I managed to get across the road. I leaned against this white wall, and there was no one about, except there was a young man on the other side of the road, and he was looking at me, but he didn't come to help me, um, because I was half on the ground. Um, but then I realized I was leaning against the wall of a public house. You know what that is? A drinking house, alcohol house. And I remembered that the chap in the secondhand bookstore, if he said a book was good, I would buy it if he'd read it. Um, and I said to him one day, I'm crossing the road now. I'm going to get my coffee, um, in this particular coffee bar. And he said, if you want a really good coffee, he said, the best place to get it is in this little tiny pub, pretty little pub. But there's no way I would have gone in there. No way. I don't go into pubs. I will if I'm escorted by a gentleman, but I don't go into pubs. And it was still open because it still had its umbrellas up outside. It had flowers decorating the walls and that. And I thought, well, if I can get round the corner to the door, maybe it'll still be open. And I did. I inched my way there. I nearly fell through the door. It was open, and it was full of people. And somebody immediately helped me to a table. She was a young woman with very long brown hair, and I learned later her name was Anne. It was absolutely packed, but she found me a place to sit, and I whispered coffee. She got me coffee. She brought me another coffee too. And she watched me and stayed with me until I felt better, easier. And I looked up, and everybody was looking at me. Um, and most of them were men. I didn't realize until a long time afterwards, they'd all been to this funeral. It was quite a small room as well, this pub. So I suppose there weren't that many, but they'd all. So what was this? This was a wake or something after the funeral, And then I was beginning to feel better, and I thought, well, I don't feel strong enough to walk back to my car yet. So I took this newspaper out of my shopping bag and I pretended to read it. And then halfway through the second cup of coffee, I really felt a lot better then, and the rest. And I looked up, and then to the right of me was this long, highly polished table with the four men and the two women sitting round it that I had seen in that hologram, which I think you would call a vision, in my bedroom nearly 3 weeks previously. And I knew their voices and I knew their faces, and they were enthralled by what was being said by this gentleman on the end with silvery white hair and very blue eyes. Well, anyway, I couldn't believe what I was watching, and I was staring so avidly that one of the women gave me a dirty look, enough to say, "What do you think you're looking at?" So I didn't look. I didn't look at that table again. But I was flabbergasted. Tended to look to read my paper for a while, and then I thought, right, I can go back to my car now. So I got up. I was just about to pick my shopping bags up, and I felt a hand on my elbow, and this gentleman said to me, "Would you like me to help you to the door? I could see you were not very well when you came in." And I knew who it was before I looked up. It was the gentleman at the end of the table with the silver hair and the blue eyes. He not only walked me to the door, he walked me to the car, and it was as if I'd known him all my life, and he became my husband.
Have you ever wondered whether the Bible was compatible with a near death experience? In my book, Heaven's Truth, the parallels between the Bible and the near death experience, your faith will be strengthened while you support this channel. In Heaven's Truth, you will learn about near death experiences and other similar experiences in the Bible. Support for the Bible contained in NDEs, a central theme that runs through both the Bible and NDEs. How the NDE brings the Bible to life for these modern times. Evidence for both the Bible and the NDE, and much more. Great book. Spillers does an excellent job weaving the relationship between NDEs and the scriptures. 5 stars on Amazon, available on Amazon.
And he was absolutely wonderful. Right, so after this experience, I believe it left something open in my brain or my mind, because extraordinary things like that happened afterwards. I've had more. Well, lots of past over loved ones have visited me. Not so much lately, but then I don't know if I've got any left now. um, Apart from extended ones whom I don't really know, but all the cousins and my siblings I grew up with, they're all gone, aunts and uncles. and that. First one was Christmas night, Christmas Eve night, and uh, I was on my way back from the bathroom. I just got into bed, and there was this aunt standing at the end of my bed. She should have been hundreds of miles away. What was she doing standing at the end of my bed? And I thought, oh, hello. And then she was gone. She was looking at me. She was staring at me. Hello, she's gone. I found out that she died that night, Christmas Eve. She passed on. So she'd come to visit me because we hadn't seen each other in a long time. That was one of them. But years before that, and I think this must have happened because of out-of-body experiences I used to have when I'd have an attack and leave my body. I think it opens up something in the brain because when my older children were young, oh, well, my son was a baby and my daughter, she would walk alongside the pram. We came here to this area to stay with a relative, and it had all been planned beforehand in writing. And then when we got here, she said her husband had said no. So we thought, oh, that's okay. We'll find a bed B&B or something, or a hotel or something. But we couldn't find anything because we didn't know that there was a royal visit the next day and everything was fully booked, full up. We had a hard time finding anything, and it was raining. And then my young husband said, um, "You, you just wait there." He didn't drive. He didn't ever drive. He said, "And I'll." Oh, I was busying around with the baby, changing it and that sort of thing. He said, "You wait here. You finish what you're doing with the baby in the pram," and he said, "I'll go catch that bus." He said, "I'll go on ahead, see if I can find somewhere." He said, "I'll meet you in that bus station." He said, "You catch the next bus," which I did. But when I was ready to catch that next bus, walking along this road, it was drizzling with rain, and my little girl said, "Oh, look, mummy, there's Uncle. He's on the bus. There's Uncle on the bus." And I thought, So I looked, and it was one of my favourite uncles on the bus, and he was gesticulating to me. He was trying to catch my attention. The bus was jam packed, absolutely full. People even standing in the aisle, and I didn't know what he was trying to say to me, and because I was walking to the bus stop, and I thought, oh, I can't understand you, Uncle, but never mind. The bus is going to stop, isn't it? But I did understand what he was saying. He was saying, go to, and he was this address. And I knew some of that address. And I knew he was saying his son, who was my cousin, one of my first cousins. And I got it. I got what he's saying. The bus picked up speed, didn't even stop at that bus stop, and it was gone over the brow of the hill. But I couldn't understand why he didn't get off. Why he wouldn't have got off to meet me. Well, anyway, that saved us because 2 buses later turned up on the doorstep. One of my first cousins welcomed us with open arms, stayed there for 6 months until we could find the right property to buy at our price, and it was wonderful. But the next day, because my cousin said, "Oh no, Dad's not not here. He's back home. That's hundreds of miles away. But the next day I phoned. We didn't. This was in the early 70s, so in this country, hardly any working class family had a phone at home. And of course, we didn't have mobile phones. And but he did. And my aunt, my favourite aunts, they had a home phone. So I went to a phone box, call box, and rang them. And their daughter, my cousin, said, "No, no, that wasn't your uncle, sweetheart." She said, "Because he's in hospital dying. He wasn't even dead. He was dying, but he was on that bus, and he gave me the address, the rest of the address. That without that, the rest of that address, I wouldn't even have thought of going there." So, and that was decades before I had this complete dying returning experience. So the other ones were out of body experiences. Well, I wouldn't have known that then. I didn't know about out of body experiences and things like that then. Um, so when my loved ones have passed, and another one who hadn't even crossed, but he must have been between worlds. He must have, because he did cross shortly afterwards. And that was somebody with a very, very dear friend. That was extraordinary. My husband was ill. I was looking after him, and I was taking this water from the kitchen into the sitting room here, and my husband was sitting in his armchair. And as I was rushing to help my husband, all of a sudden, my dear friend was at my side, and I thought, "Oh, it's imagination." So I continued heading towards my husband in his armchair, and then he was there again, my dear friend. And this time, nothing was said. He didn't say anything. He was there, and then he was gone. And my husband must have seen the shock in me, because he said, "Oh, Pet," he said, "you need a rest. You sit down, have a rest for a moment." Pet, he said. So I did. I've never got over the shock of that, because he wasn't even dead, but he'd had a few strokes, so maybe he was almost dead, or maybe he died and came back. I don't know. That was that. But I've seen a number of my loved ones as they're passing over, or when they have just passed. Some of them, a couple of them. One is an ex-son-in-law, one son-in-law. Yes, and other relatives. But yes, I must tell you about my mother. Now, my mother died in 1974. So nearly 54. And she died of a brain aneurysm. I wasn't with her at the time. I had been travelling to look after her every couple of weeks. I had 2 young children. It was difficult. But nothing. Then 22 years later, after I had died and come back, after that experience, was wonderful. I torn a tendon in my ankle, and the following, and I did it at night, evening, about 9 o'clock at night. I'd rushed across the room into a pipe that was sticking out, and it got my ankle. And I thought, what am I going to do? I've got to escort 100 children, help escort 100 children with 4 other teachers to Calais the next day. And they wouldn't have been able to find someone else. I thought, oh, if I just keep it lifted, keep my leg high. The swelling probably go down and I'll be all right by the morning. And he did. I was fine. But by the time I got back home from that trip, and the children were wonderful. They were helping me and were kind to me. And they listened to everything I said. And but I got back home and I had stuff over at my daughter's, and she took me to A&E the next day, and they said it was and then I went on to my own house. But I couldn't get up the stairs, so I sat downstairs on the settee. I was sleeping on the settee, and then 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. Something woke me up. But then I'm an early riser anyway. I still get up at 5. And my mother was standing at the end of the bed, at the end of the settee, which was weird because she was standing between the end of the settee, which was flush to the wall. She was standing between the settee and the wall, and her arms were going through my right leg, going right through my leg, like that through my leg. And it took me a while. And then I cottoned on and I realised my ankle, my foot had got stuck between the end of the settee, between the end of the cushion settee. They're quite hard, aren't these settee cushions that we lie on, and the arm of the settee, and it had got stuck. And as I realised what she was trying to tell me to lift my leg out, lift my ankle out, and as I sat down and I bent over to release my foot, and as I was doing it, she was fading away, and I was saying, "Oh, Mum, don't go, please don't go." The love I felt from her was so overwhelming. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Walking on air because of that. Then, a couple of years later, I'd moved to this flat, this apartment, and where I had seen that hologram of my late husband. And again, I was going to watch. I don't know why. When I see all my late loved ones who died, when they're dying, it's always usually in the afternoon. I don't see these things at night. I see them in the day, which is odd. I did see that the first time I did see my aunt. Yes, Christmas Eve. Yes, that was night, wasn't it? Yes. Well, anyway, I was going to watch this film, these afternoon films that I loved, and so I was coming from my bedroom into my sitting room. There was my mother behind my armchair, and wow, it was my mother, and she was so beautiful. But what was odd was I was looking at her through a veil of beautiful colours. And the love again was tremendous. Was tremendous. The love I felt coming from her. And again, she was fading away. And again, I was saying, "Don't go, please. Don't go, Mum. Please don't go." But she faded away. Right. One of my dogs I'd grieved over for 27 years because it had to be put to sleep, and it, for no reason at all except my ex didn't like the dog. Well, I was out one day watching this talk being given by this man, loads of people around me, and I was enjoying what he was saying. And as I was watching him, my dog appeared on the stage saying, "Granted, it's my dog. I've had many dogs, but she did it by her neck. She was so happy. But a couple of weeks before that, I'd been really grieving for her. And I said, I'm so sorry. Whatever goes on over on the other side, somebody took pity on me over there, God, Spirit, whatever, took pity on me, and they let me see my dog. And, you know, I watched her for a long time. And her coat she looked better than she had here because her coat was glossier. And she was so happy. But she didn't come to me. But I watched her fade away. She was turning round and round, and she gradually faded away. And I looked around at everybody. Nobody looked as if they'd seen her. I went around for a few weeks telling everybody I'd seen my dog, and everybody believed me and listened to me. Nobody thought I was bonkers. So that was that then. So yes, I also, when I think of somebody, I either hear from them next moment, or it used to be that if I'd often see a letter on the doormat before I got up. We don't have letters anymore. We just have texts, and that doesn't happen to me anymore. I'd know who that letter was before I got downstairs because I would have already seen it in a dream as I was waking up. That doesn't happen to me anymore, but somebody goes to text me or ring me, I know a few moments before who it is. But something very, very astonishing happened to me. This was on a Friday, the 5th of April 2019, and I'd gone into the kitchen here where I live now and made a cup of tea and came back to my chair over there, my armchair over there, to sit down in front of my television to watch the 6 o'clock news. And I put my tea down on the table thing in front of the telly. The telly stands on. And then I turned to sit in my chair. And I wrote about it in this book. Dear John, but never a dear John. Because it's a very sad story. We were tragically torn apart in 1964 because of lying, malicious letters that were being sent to my mother. So, well, she would usually because it was in my day. Well, couldn't get married until we were 21. That's when we came of age. I don't know when that was abolished, but it was a very strict rule. Just as, if you got pregnant, it was out of marriage, it was a terrible thing in my day. That all changed in the middle 60s, I think. But my mother, we were going to get married. And my mother believed all this. None of it was true. She didn't check it out, but she tricked me. Her and my aunt tricked me into leaving the area. No way did I not think I'd be able to come back. I couldn't. We didn't have a photograph of each other. My mother always opened all my mail before I read it. She was very strict. I loved her to bits, but she was very controlling. I think he must have written to me because I wrote him and told him where I was. I never got a reply. Well, anyway, that was 1964. So, 2019 just as I can watch the 6 p.m. news, 5th of the 4th, he was standing in front of me. And he was young, not old. He must have died then. Um, and he was standing in front of me, and I could feel every centimeter of him. I could feel him completely, and I could feel his love. It was utterly amazing. And I said, "Oh, John." And as I said that, he came right through my body. And it wasn't frightening, it wasn't scary. It was incredibly beautiful. It was wonderful. That's when I felt every centimeter of his being. Utterly incredible. But it didn't last long enough because when he was in front of me, I was in the act of sitting down. By the time I'd said, "Oh, John," and he'd come through me, I, I my bum hit the chair. So it was over so quickly. Oh, utterly amazing. Now, he would have had no idea where I was living. I could have been living abroad, I could have been living anywhere. Um, and vice versa, you know. And yet he sought me out, he hadn't forgotten me. So love doesn't die. I've come to the conclusion that love is not just love, it's a very powerful kind of magnetic force that keeps us connected to each other, whether it's an animal, your loved ones, your friends, like John, my husband. Um, it doesn't die. It seems to magnify. Another thing, excuse me, I've realised is the love we have here for our children, for our husband, for our wife, for our family. We love them, but there's nothing like the love that you have that I felt when my mother's come to me and John and my late husband. That is very overwhelming. It's far stronger than the love we can feel here. It's incredible. Um, I don't know what else to say except that I am no longer religious. I don't follow any religion anymore. I do like churches. I still like them, but I don't belong to any religion anymore because I think religion can be good as long as it's not forced on anybody. It does teach us, you know, to be kind and to love and not to kill. And I don't believe in. I think war is. I think the instigators of war have a lot to answer for. I do hear about people who have had life reviews, but I didn't have a life review. But maybe that was because it was known that once remembered my little boy and saw my little boy, I would want to come back. And I think until rigor mortis sets in, there is that possibility that you can come back. And I think that's what happened to me. I sped back into my body very, very fast. I think before rigor mortis could set in. I don't know how long that takes to set in. Yes, so want to ask me any questions? I don't know what else I can say now. I
So
just want
it's like, yeah. So like, do you see religion as just being too small to capture all the spiritual truths and what you experienced?
absolutely, absolutely, and I do feel that religion. Um, you know, people tell a story, don't they? Something happens, and people explain it. Then the person who explained it to explains it to someone else, And I think it gets, there's a lot of elaboration that gets put onto things. Do you know what I mean? As the years
Mhm.
go on, I think I think biblical stories change as time has gone on. I don't think we've got all the truth of everything. I think, yes, that's what I can say. But I am grateful that I was brought up, um, to honor God and honor your parents and not murder and not steal. I do think that that is a good thing about it. But to force religious beliefs on people, I think that's bad, very bad.
Mhm. So, like,
So I've
you
never
saw
to have
different colors in heaven? You saw different colors in heaven. Did you see colors there that you don't see on earth?
everything. Well, I recognized the pastel colors. I recognized white and I recognized gold. But what I would say is they were more outstanding, more vibrant. Yes, I'd say that, definitely. Yes. Sort of overwhelming, very vibrant.
Hmm. Well, like, do you think that being was God that you encountered on the other side?
I don't think so. I Do you mean the one accompanying me? The being accompanying me? I think of that person as my guardian angel. It could have been a relative. I think God is a universal consciousness. I don't think God is one person, but this is just theory. I don't think of God as one person I'm praying to. I don't think of Jesus as well, I think we're all part of God. I think we're here to learn experiences. I think it's awful to have to be on this earth, actually, with all the pain and suffering. But then it makes us compassionate, doesn't it? If we go through awful things, it gives us a more compassionate soul. It builds, well, it should build compassion in us, love. People who have everything they want and get their own way in everything, their word is law, they can be cold and calculating because they haven't suffered as normal, ordinary illnesses and have to work really hard for a pittance and things like that. If you if you want to know true kindness, go to the poorest people. I grew up very poor, very poor. I needn't have, but my father was an alcoholic. He squandered everything instead of looking after his children. And we were his second family. He hadn't even looked after his first family. We didn't know that for many years. And he actually drank himself to death. But asthma was actually on his death certificate, one of the things that killed him. I think the rest was drinking and smoking. He used to smoke 60 a day. He was very cruel,
Mhm.
selfish. I knew it was, I suffered from malnutrition as a child. Knew what it was like to go to school and children make fun of you because you weren't dressed properly.
Hmm. So you've written a couple books, haven't you?
Oh, yes. So the one about John is just a smaller version
Hmm.
of Flying Beyond the Stars. Can you see
That's about your near-death experience.
that? Yes. And it takes in all the other things that I've mentioned to you.
Hmm. Is all these available on Amazon?
Oh, yes. That's only available on Amazon, but this one is available on Barnes and Noble and others online booksellers.
Hmm.
And Kady Karinas if my name is Googled, it comes up with these things, you know.
Hmm. So, is there like one final word you'd like to leave with the audience before we close out?
Right, yes. What I've discovered is the only thing that matters in this life is kindness. Kindness to everybody. You know, you don't have to be bending the knee. You don't have to be going to church morning, noon, and night, and all that goodiness. No, it is the actions of kindness, real kindness. Selfishness doesn't cut it. It's kindness, and of course, not lying. You know, well, I think that goes hand in hand with kindness, doesn't it? I mean, my life with John was cut short because of maliciousness and lies. No, that person that was a relative. Had been, it was jealousy.
Hmm.
There's not any compassion there, kindness. That wouldn't have happened. Yeah. Yeah, we can talk about these things now because they've taken some decades ago.
Yeah.
Because of my age now, I couldn't have mentioned that when I was younger. Decades have
Yeah, well,
passed now.
well, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Uh, well, I just want people to know that we go on. And I think I've watched other people's near-death experiences on YouTube, but no one has mentioned becoming part. I became part of my children while I was traveling in a vortex. I don't think I've heard of anyone else going through a vortex either. Have you?
Oh, yeah, I've heard of people going through a vortex. Yeah.
You? Have you?
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
heard about them going through a black tunnel, and apparently not everybody does. Have you heard about anybody coming back through a vortex that was cold and grey and scary, frightening, coming back? It was so
No.
beautiful coming back, and then coming back through the black tunnel, which
Hmm.
sent me into panic mode. That was frightening. Now, I can't understand why. That's very strange, isn't it?
Have you ever wanted to learn to meditate? Check out my book, Meditation for Everyone: How to Quickly Have a More Peaceful, Mindful, and Fulfilled Life, and support this channel. With Meditation for Everyone, you will learn to quickly and easily meditate, relieve stress and anxiety, alleviate depression, and have more joy, peace, and relaxation. What you will learn: mindfulness, the art of stillness, step by step on how to meditate, strategies for overcoming challenges to meditation, and much more. D. Mason said this is a nice meditation book, even for those already meditating. I agree with the statements that it will help to have a more peaceful, mindful, and fulfilled life. 4.6 star rating, available on Amazon.